Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Sunday talk within the Nine-Sided Circle. I am your host, Noor Kyle.
And I am her faithful sidekick, Mushtaq Ali.
Yes, by my side in all things. So thank you for being here. Thank you for joining us live or watching on the replay on YouTube. We're so glad to have you here. And I have to say, I'm very thankful right now. I just went through all the donations as I said I would for the purpose of getting the raffle squared away for the 3 free sessions. And I'm just I'm just feeling the love. And thank you so much to all of you who donated. We've let the winner of the raffle know. And to the rest of you, I mean, we wish we could give our time to all of you for the things that you have done to support us, especially over the past few months when we had to make up the difference on a few things. And we did not quite make it to our 5,000 goal, but in the end, we have so much to look forward to over the next few months that we're going to be putting out there. And I think that we have been blessed by the support that you all have given us, not just in the past few months since we've done this particular fund drive for 2024, but just in general. And that really means a lot to us. So thank you for that now and always. And of course, I'm gonna keep the YouTube spiel short this time.
The
Why
shorter the better.
ugly it up? But if you'd love to continue to donate, please feel free. The links are in the description, and you can join us on Facebook. You can join our mail list, leave comments, subscribe, all that stuff.
Yeah,
We love
like,
communicating
subscribe,
with
leave
you.
a
Yeah.
comment.
So
That's
thank
the
you.
mantra of YouTube.
It seems to be. So with all of that said, let's get started.
Yeah.
So we have a pretty intriguing topic this evening, don't we, Mushtaq?
Yes, we do.
Yeah.
This is a topic for people who want to change the world.
hmm Yeah. So what inspired you this one, this topic? Do you remember?
Oh, this is something that I've been thinking about for weeks.
Yeah.
And what inspired me is the question of how do you change things? Things need to be changed. We are in a desperate situation. The whole world is in a desperate situation. And there are two ways to change something. Most of the time, things are changed quantitatively, right? You change the number of politicians, you change uh, the number of guns pointed at somebody. If you are uh, a politician, you just aim at your enemies and they hopefully don't bother you or they do what you want. But what if you don't have the politics and the guns? How do you change things? And Sufis have a tried and true answer to this. And their answer is you change things by changing the stories that people tell themselves and tell each other. The world is held together by stories. And the people who know this know how to change the world. And we've seen that. If you've been keeping up with the elections in the United States, that election was won by telling a compelling story. It was a stupid story, but El Chito Furioso, he told us the story of immigrants eating house pets. He told us the story of everybody trying to take what's ours. He told us all of these stories, and they were easy to believe. He told us so many stories that he was telling us stories faster than we could fact check them. And lots of people took on those stories because it resonated with them. So think about it. Stories are a medium of communication, and he who controls the means of communication controls the world. What does this look like in history?
Feel free to spitball. Yeah,
Yeah.
you.
Randolph Hearst.
Randolph, oh, hell yeah. For those of you who don't know, William Randolph Hearst was a newspaper mogul. He invented what it was called yellow journalism.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Now I have some context. So explain for people who don't know what that is.
I'm going to let you do that.
Yellow journalism. It's like, isn't it like muckraking and
Yeah.
just kind of like, if anyone's familiar with the New York Post, which is just kind of like a rag of a newspaper, that's a good example of contemporary, just, you know, lowest common denominator type journalism. So I can't think of any other
Yeah.
specific examples though.
Yeah.
Well,
And in 1930s, 1940s dollars, he was probably richer than Musk.
Mm.
He made huge amounts of money. He built what's now known as Hearst Castle, which is on the Pacific coast on Highway 1, north of uh, San Luis Obispo and such like, and kind of in the middle of nowhere. And it is one of the most ornate, it is probably the most ornate place in the United States. It's like Versailles in some ways, a little bit gaudier, but Osama,
Yeah, we've got a bunch of
yeah,
Osama, did you have your hand up? Amelia has their hand up.
yeah, Amelia has her hand. Sorry, too far away from the screen.
Those.
All good. Yeah, the one of the founding fathers, Charles Thompson, he himself stated that like the truth of what actually happened in the American Revolution was not as important as the like folklore that was cultivated surrounding the founding fathers. Like he had a vast record of like what literally happened, but he said that it was more powerful to allow just myths about like heroic stories about the Revolutionary War would be more powerful for directing the United States into the future, basically.
And he was absolutely right.
Yep, yep. Excellent. Yes. So in a similar vein, we have Khalil mentioning the story of manifest destiny,
Yes.
the story of the quote unquote American dream. Adrian mentions Rosebud.
That's
Khalil.
from a movie called Citizen Kane, and
Oh, okay.
about
Yeah,
the life of William Randolph Hearst, loosely disguised.
got it.
One of Orson Welles' great works.
Yes. Khalil adds any of the assorted and sordid retellings of American ideology in Disney movies from 1935 to very recently.
Yeah, I just made Noor watch Song of the South with me. I have a bootleg copy of it because she had never seen it and didn't understand why people were perhaps a little upset by it.
Well, I mean, I had read about it, but I had not seen it. I had no reason to see it. But I mean, I get it. They did a very interesting job of papering over the worst of Americans, of our cultural legacy.
Yeah, Orientalism, M mentions.
Yes. Oh, Adrian, Birth of a Nation.
Oh man.
Mark.
Fortunately, that one didn't take off as deeply as it could have. Birth of a Nation is basically about the rise of the Ku Klux Klan.
But in like a yay sort of way.
Yeah.
James.
Well, one great example, well, for want of a better term, great example, is the Third Reich with who's the propaganda minister, Goebbels?
Hmm.
Yeah.
He didn't just promote a story, he promoted the means of spreading it. He seized on all the new technology.
Yeah.
Like he really went overdrive in controlling the story and spreading it and getting ahead of everyone else's story with the concept. And it was a standard thing. We are special. The other is evil. They're coming to get us. We got to get them before they get all the usual things.
Yeah.
Kind of really laid bare. But yeah.
Yeah. So one of the things that we see from this is that low vibration stories, I hate to use the hippie words for it, but that's what we used to call them. Low vibration stories are really powerful because they speak to what is worst in human beings. Now, let's look at some other stories. Who here has read any part of Rumi's Masnavi?
It's okay if you haven't. I know a few of you have though. Yeah.
Yeah, most people have seen a poem here and a poem there. But what you don't realize is that this is a collection of interlocking stories when you actually read it. And it's huge. I mean, I have the unabridged translation from Nicholson, and it's like 6 volumes, thick volumes, huge amount of work. And it's all stories, poems interspersed, but mostly stories. And each of the stories tells you something. Let's look at the Conference of the Birds. The Conference of the Birds is um, basically it's a high fantasy
With birds.
with birds, and it tells a story. And that story, I wish Zainab were here. That story, when you hear it in the original, is incredibly compelling. Every line is a mind worm that will just stick in your head, and you'll find yourself singing it to yourself. It's that good. Can you think of anything more contemporary?
I mean, speaking of high fantasy, Lord of the Rings, right?
Yeah. You know, out west we have things like La Morte d'Arthur and the Arthurian cycle in all of its various permutations. Yeah, Harry Potter to a certain extent as well. Yeah. Now that's an obscure one. Saraswati is an interesting fellow. Purple
Well,
Mind or Crimson Angel. Amelia, speak to us.
I mean, the new emerging popularity of Dune through the film, I've noticed it
yes.
made it easier
Yeah.
to talk about a lot of esoteric ideas with people, for sure.
Yeah, Dune is one of the big ones. What about Gurdjieff? Gurdjieff's main work is a work of science fiction. It's a dude in a spaceship talking to his grandsons about a trip that he made to Earth.
And it's a wooden spaceship, no less.
Yeah,
Hmm. Stranger in a Strange Land.
yeah. I don't know that that's as enduring as Dune is, but for those of us who were there at the right time, it was important.
Hmm. Oh, Halil mentions the Book of Mormon.
Yeah.
Um,
And that shows you that a story doesn't have to be true to have an incredible impact. Did I say that out loud?
what else? Name of the Wind. I know that's another favorite of yours.
Mm-hmm.
Um, if you're into low vibes, try Atlas Shrugged.
Yeah,
It's read all
Kevin,
of that
true.
thing.
yeah,
And
yeah.
it
Rat's right
has,
there with you on that one, James.
yeah, it has an enduring legacy to a certain kind of person.
Yep.
I
Okay.
once dated a girl who was really into Ayn Rand, and so I read Atlas Shrugged. Then I stopped seeing her.
Oof.
Probably a very sound move.
Yeah,
It's a vicious, hateful book. She's also on speed when she wrote it, or on speed when she completed it, anyhow. So,
yeah. And spent the last part of her life on Social Security.
Mm. Now there's a story.
Yeah,
Okay, so we've come up with some
yeah,
downer ones and some pretty cool
yeah.
ones.
So let's look at Gurdjieff's body of work. Of the three main books that he wrote, though you could count five in total, they would be The Herald of the Coming Good, the what was it? The Struggle of the Magicians, Beelzebub's Tales, Meetings with Remarkable Men, and Life is Real Only Then When I Am. Of those five, three are works of fiction, more or less. Three are stories. We can say stories. And the other two, which are not terribly popular, are prose works. So, Struggle of the Magicians, Beelzebub's Tales, and Meeting with Remarkable Men are novels. They tell a story. And what do they do with the story? The story teaches. The story teaches in ways that just telling people stuff doesn't teach. Does this make sense?
Yeah, I think people are
Good.
following along.
Now, along with story, you have the fraternal twins, poetry and music. For those of you who are old enough to remember the 60s, the driving force of um, both the anti-war movement and the civil rights movement were not speeches by important people, it was music. And some of that music was poetry. And that is what got people thinking in a different way. Examples of that are um, Wooden Ships by Crosby, Stills, and Nash. Uh, and of course, Ohio.
The first Starship album blows against the Empire.
Yep.
my housemate just gave you a massive fist bump for, was it the Crosby, Stills and Nash?
That first Starship album is actually Paul Kantner. It was a solo thing. So it's not officially Starship. Sorry, I'm a
Uh,
nerd. I'm not responsible for his actions.
That's okay. If he likes the stuff, even if he doesn't like the stuff we're saying, he's
Oh,
welcome.
yeah.
it has a fantastic cast of guest musicians.
Yeah. And Adrian points out the term legomenism, which is yes.
Yep.
Some of these things that we have mentioned, Conference of the Birds is without a doubt definitely 100% a legomenism. Attending a concert, well, you can only leave if you promise to enjoy yourself.
I'll try very hard to do that.
Good. And you're
We
looking
have
good
faith in
too.
you. You can
So
do this.
have a great time. Bye. All right.
I'll get it in the pit.
Oh, careful then. Yes.
Yes.
Fight on. Okay. Um,
Khalil points out, and very accurately, that The Wall by Pink Floyd basically prophesized the rise of El Chito.
or Drew. Yeah. Okay.
I happen to like Germans, so I don't want to insult them by insinuating that he may be related to them.
Well, that was their original family name. They
I
Yeah.
changed
know.
it.
Yeah. Yep.
So, y'all know what a legomenism is, other than a word that's very hard to say. I will tell you because probably there are whole tens of people watching this video who don't know. It's a term coined by Mr. Gurdjieff, and it refers to certain, excuse me, works that are in the sphere of what he called objective art. A legomenism has embedded within it something that we can learn that is passed down, not necessarily verbally, but uh, passed down through the ages. So a, a dance can be a legomenism. Gurdjieff talked about that a lot. Uh, yeah, everybody sees the same thing in it, or they see the same thing according to their state and station. That last is an important distinction.
Yeah, I believe I remember him mentioning uh, certain statues.
Yes. The the greatest experience I have ever had with the statue was a legomenism, and that was in the Vatican of all places. A statue by Michelangelo of the Madonna with the Christ laid across her lap. And it was so moving to be in front of that that I can't even talk about it. Yes.
Yeah. The Pieta. Yep. I probably am not saying that very well, Adrian.
Yes. Pronounce it for us, Adrian.
La Pietà.
Pieta.
Exactly. That one.
The accent on there. Yeah.
Yeah. That one can move people to tears just standing in front of it. So, what does this mean for us? That is the $64,000 question. What does this mean for us? If we want to change the world, what does this mean for us?
We need to figure out how to create stories of a certain kind.
Yes, create objective art. Tell stories that are compelling in various different ways. Adrian is a musician. He does this through his music. Some of you write, some of you talk, some of you have other arts.
Mm.
Yes, Adrian is absolutely correct. It is the most positively subversive thing that an artist can do.
Yep.
There is a reason that when the Soviet Union was in power, they locked up more poets than they did politicians. Think about it. I mean, y'all, most of you are too young to remember this, but we would hear over and over again, oh, the Soviet Union has locked up this poet. Why? They didn't like his poetry. It's not that his poetry was bad, it was good.
It said too much.
It said too much, and it said it in a way that people could hear.
An interesting contemporary version of that is the way that Putin reacted to the band Pussy Riot.
Oh, yeah, that's a
Right.
perfect example of that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that was hard for, I mean, I remember being not even an adult yet when that happened, and it was hard for me to wrap my head around that. It was like, what did they, I don't know, like people saw their breasts or something, or, I couldn't really wrap my
Heard
head
their
around what it
words.
was.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. As Halil says, they just shot the politicians. Yeah. I mean, there's so many ways to crush a people.
And then there's the story of Solzhenitsyn.
Yeah. I was just thinking of him. Tell us the story of Solzhenitsyn. I don't want to be the only person talking about this.
To the extent that I remember, I mean, basically he ended up in a gulag.
Yeah.
And I guess he was released somehow at the end of a sentence and wrote a novel about it, which was very powerful. If I'm remembering it correctly, it's been a long
That's pretty
time.
much how it happened. It's been a long time since I've thought about it as well.
Hmm. Yeah. Adrian mentions it's an inquisition in various forms.
Yep.
Nobody expects the Spanish Inquisition.
It's true.
Let's face it, the guys were very effective.
Yeah.
Yeah, on the very negative side, I suppose all the stories about witches in Europe.
Yeah. Witches and heretics.
Yeah. Well,
But
Also,
it gave us all beef salami.
What?
Yeah. So one of the ways that the Inquisition would decide that you were not really a Christian if you came from a Jewish or a Muslim background is they would look around your house and see if you had sausages hanging, like the big sausages that you can get in the Italian stores.
Hmm.
And if you didn't, you were suspect. So some enterprising Jewish fellow invented an all beef sausage that was actually kosher. And they hung it up like any other sausage. And people would walk by and go, oh, they got pork there. This is true story.
Or if you washed, apparently.
That was a big thing. There was a woman who was burned in England or hanged in England on the accusation of witchcraft. She was accused by another woman who witnessed her turning out the pockets of her husband's pants to wash them. And the logic was that no good Christian would wash what could not be seen. I kid you not. So these are stories that folks like us need to counter. And the question is, and this is for everybody, how do you tell your truth? How do you communicate it to others in a way that can be heard? Remember, the court jester is the only one who can tell the truth to the king because he tells it in the form of jokes. Remember that. James.
Well, just following straight from that satire and comedy, even if it's not serious, can really leave a lasting impact on a person.
Yeah. I mean, I bet you everybody here, if you thought for a minute, could quote George Carlin.
No, I never came across him being in England, and after I moved here, I didn't have a TV set anyway for a couple of decades.
Yeah, but you came across him.
Well, I've heard the name, but I don't know any of his material.
Hmm.
OMG, we must fix that.
I like Adrian's Nasruddin stories.
Yeah.
I've got a friend he travels all over the world. I don't even know where he is right now. But back in the late 70s, I remember he and I were on a trip to Madrid, and I was co-teaching a class for 2 weeks. And on the weekend, I remember he and I, with the other teacher, went touring around various places, and he and I were telling each other Nasruddin stories the whole time. It was great fun.
Oh, that's really cool.
Nasruddin stories are incredibly powerful, some of them. They are the Sufi equivalent to the Zen koan.
Mm-hmm. Zen stories too.
Yeah, Zen stories too.
Yeah.
So here's the question. Adrian.
There's this famous story of Nasruddin passing the border, and after 30 years, the chief at the border, at the toll, he comes to Nasruddin and says, "Look, man, I'm retiring. I know that we were smuggling something all those years, and then what was it? I'm not gonna go after you." And Nasruddin said, "Donkeys, man."
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
So
great Nasruddin stories.
that's a legomenism. All
Yes.
is 101, right?
Yep. So I would submit to you that every single one of you has an art. It might not be as obvious, but say Brian. Brian has a couple of arts that he can use to communicate. One of them is his gym, because exercise can be a form of art.
Yes, yes. Michaela was saying if you have a passion or a talent, you can use your voice there, and that's what we're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, so we have laid the table. We have put the food down. Now we just have to convince you to eat. And to eat, each one of you uh, must decide that you are going to produce art of some form or another. And that art needs to tell your truth. And telling truth is dangerous. We know this.
It can be scary.
Yeah. And it can be pretty much anything. For instance, Diva, your astrology can be a legomenism.
Do you have a question about that? Yeah, I see you.
Yeah, explain that further.
Well, I have to go back. First of all, I have to tell you that I do not believe in astrology at all.
It's okay.
But as I was going to say, it doesn't mean it doesn't work. It just means I don't believe it.
Right.
And again, I had a girlfriend who was an astrologer, and she was brilliant at it. One of the best I have ever seen. And I kept scratching my head going, how can she figure out all of these things looking at these charts that are not even accurate anymore? But she still figures them out. And one day it came to me that she used the charts as a medium to tell the person a story about themselves.
That's that's brilliant. I always say I use the charts to get my logical mind off to the side so things come through me.
Yeah.
That's
And
exactly.
when she did that, she was like 99% accurate about everything that she said. It was scary.
And you're right, because think about it, there's so many different types of astrologers, and they're all doing it, and several types contradict each other,
Mm-hmm.
but it all works.
Yeah. So it's what is the story you can tell from this chart for this person that will speak to them and hold the truth from you to them? And I still don't believe in astrology, but I do believe in astrologers, if that makes
That's
sense.
beautiful. And yeah, I understand exactly what you're saying. That's what I try to do. Like you have these wonderful qualities. Um, and when are they going to be activated? And yeah, I
Yeah.
love it.
Awesome. Yes.
Kevin, that's something.
Yeah, we
A
got,
bunch of people who said things.
yes. I'm gonna get to the more recent ones Khalil mentioned.
Yeah, we got to go all the way up there.
My contacts are getting crappy, so it's hard for me to read actually.
Panchatantra, the five tantras, the five.
Yeah. He mentions that those influenced Aesop's fables and have had more influence on global culture than possibly any other body of literature.
Right.
So this is what we're capable of. And RM says I like to sketch and I'm enrolled in classes in upcoming days. That's exciting. That's a good way to round out your education these days, huh?
Yeah.
And Kevin says, I've had this experience with astrology too. It's fascinating. And RM says, also, Enneagram is a piece of art, and practice with it has been my new passion as well. Yeah,
Yay.
I mean, just as we've been talking about with astrology, the Enneagram is a tool through which we can tell a story. And that can be a useful, supportive story, or it can be, kind of a self-destructive one. But we shape that. We can take responsibility for that. Yes, I know several of you do music, and I know that's really important to you, and it really allows you to, through it, you're able to express yourself in ways that maybe words just they can't get there. Or it's a different route, different from poetry, different from prose.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Osama,
Osama.
been waiting for you to speak up.
Yeah. This is, I mean, yeah, this topic, I'm so passionate about it. It's, um, as I mentioned before, over the holidays, I went to just you know, few friends just got together and rented a cabin, and we just we started jamming. We were just playing music. It wasn't even like just spontaneously just playing music. Um, and at some point, this is like real trippy for me. At some point, we were just outside. Mind you, this is upstate New York, beautiful trees. There's a nice river next to us. The sound of the river is so loud, like you can't even hear your thoughts. Um, and we're just chilling. We didn't have any of the instruments. All the instruments were inside. Um, and we just started to hum. And at some point, after we finished, we started to recite the Quran, Madu, the Fatiha,
Yeah.
but not recite it as it's being like we sung it. it was sung, and I had a moment where I was like, oh, I get it. I get why they say you don't necessarily need to understand the words.
Yeah.
Just be receptive to the vibration of it. When it was sung in a group format, it is life-changing. It's like, okay, that makes sense that people can be attracted to
The music of it.
yeah, to the music of it. And you don't necessarily need to even understand what is being said. It's just being receptive to it. Um, so it
That's one of
there's
the great secrets of the Quran. So,
I n I never understood it until that experience.
yeah.
And it's um yeah, just allowing oneself to play and to express. And that question that you ask, how do you want to express your truth? That's a powerful question. How do
Yeah.
you want to express your truth? You have it, and it's like it forces you to go in and first of all figure that truth out for oneself. And how does it want to be expressed? How does the divine want to express it through you? Um, yeah, this is beautiful, amazing, and it's real. It's real. That's I think that's one thing that I always kind of philosophically understood it, but to experience it, right? It's kind of like it's like experiencing real art, kind of like what you said. Um, it's
Yeah.
real. It's
Yes.
a real thing. And it changes people. It changed me. Um,
Yeah. This is
yeah.
one of the great secrets of the Quran. The Quran is one of the historical legomenisms on so many different levels. For people who don't know it in Arabic, the book is one long poem, and it's an intricate poem. It's not like a child's rhyme. It is one of the most intricate and elegant poems ever written, from start to finish, without one break in the the metric structure of it, not even one line. And Quran, they could have called it the book, right? Like they did with the Bible. Bible means book, and in Arabic that would be the kitab, al-kitab, and you can call it that. But Quran, what does Quran mean? Anybody know?
Read.
Yes, it means the recitation. It means to speak it, to sing it, to share it out amongst people. And that's the power of the recitation, is not that it was written down on paper, but that it is spoken to the community. And it, as Osama says, it will change you.
And it's full of stories.
Yes, it is completely full of stories.
Another another uh, thing that kind of happened as well is I brought my def. Def is a frame drum.
Yes.
Um, and I've been playing the drum, like the frame drum, since I was a kid. And I never accepted it as an instrument. Because since I was a kid, I wanted to play the violin. And the violin was just too expensive to learn in Jordan. And my parents said, take this drum instead. And I started to play the drum. And being in a setting that I got to utilize the frame drum in a way that was like a heartbeat, and seeing the feedback of the people and how they received that sound and that space that it created. Because the deaf, I don't know if anybody heard it um, live, it takes space. It
Yeah.
really does take a lot of space. Um, and it holds. It's like it creates that container and it holds. So it kind of like that truth that wants to be expressed. Like one thing that I've learned is that sometimes these things choose us in a weird way.
Yeah.
Um, so I say this to say that sometimes even if we have certain um, art or medium that we're not necessarily too uh, excited about, to be open to it, and that the fact that it is in our lives, and to be curious about why we are good at this thing and why did it come in our lives, and pursue it even. Um, yeah, just wanted to share that.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, and Nora had mentioned that doing your art can be scary. And in times like that where you get an inspiration and you know you have to do it. And if you have to travel, you'll travel for it. If you have to spend money, you'll spend the money. And it's almost like just surrendering to the muse and not second guessing it and not um, letting not denying it because you're in fear of what other people might think or any other thing that might happen.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, lately I'm thinking about writing, right? And I'm good at it, but I also find it terrifying because then I have to be, if it's gonna mean anything, it has to feel like it's coming from a real place, and that feels scary. But as you're saying, Brian, it's not just the vulnerability part, it's the investment part. It's giving yourself to it. There's a lot to this. Thank you, Brian.
Sure.
Adrienne.
Well, there's my my story playing the guitar is that I got obsessed very early, and I got very good playing very early as a kid. You know, I could play fast stuff and everything, and it was terrible because that prevented me from playing music, actual music, like many years, and that got me into a position of despair almost because I wanted and needed it so bad, you know, and I couldn't. And any kid, you know, would just learn like a pentatonic and play some blues or something, and they had truth. And what I was playing didn't. It was everything was learned, carefully crafted, and everything. So, and I was already in my 20s when after studying and studying and studying a lot, learning all the scales and all their pages and all the and everything I played was just like sounded like an exercise. It was terrible, terrible until I started listening, and that's the the main thing, you know. And you start listening piece by piece, little by little, and then you start connecting dots. And I remember it was not long ago. If you see my story now, I'm 56. I was my mid 30s when finally, you know, the thing arrived. It was March the 3rd, 2003, that I said, "Oh," because it's the 3303. That's why I remember. And I said, "Ah, that's what it's all about." And then from that point, I started to build to what I now I feel like I can't really learn anything. I have to apply myself to so much because I'm improvising all the time, you know. I kind of resist learning something that is previously done. I try to refresh and update that relationship. I became addicted to it, you know. So that's my sharing of this, and still that way. And just a plus, sometimes when you're playing and improvising in the right, you know, people that are also giving you the juice, you know. The thing is, you're not really playing. You're listening something that's happening, you know. And then comes something that's even crazier. That's You're not playing only what you have inside your head. You're playing what the audience have as a collective in their whatever, in the state, in their, you know. That's the thing. And then it's like, then I really come back home like say, yeah, yeah, today that happened, you know. It's not always, but I try to get to that point and further all the time, you know. just just this.
Thank you, Adrian. Ah, and we all have such varied and yet similar experiences too. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to add that, I mean, basically, that's what jazz at its best is all about. Musicians listening to each other and responding.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what all the great music is, unless it's symphony. I mean, when you get around Middle Eastern musicians, they're playing jazz, just using different scales.
Yeah.
I love some of the Middle Eastern instruments. The oud is one of my favorites.
Yeah. I actually learned to play the dap, though he called it tar because that's the word they use for it in his country, from a guy by the name of Hamza al-Din. He was a Nubian. So, uh, Black African from South Sudan. And he was an oud player, he was trained as an engineer, but he decided he wanted to play oud, and his parents hated it. Every time he went home, his father would break his oud. So he always bought a cheap oud before he went back. Um, Brilliant oud player, and you can find his music. But before he played the oud, he played the duff, and he was a virtuoso at it. Um, Usually, when you learn to do Arabic rhythms, there's a language to it. Uh, just like with tabla, there's a language, and so if you're
Indian hand drums. Yeah.
yeah. So when I can say to Osama, dun dun taka tak, dun taka tak. And he knows that that's the rhythm called baladi, and he knows exactly what hand to play what with. Now, down in Nubia, they have a similar thing, but instead of just using the sounds, they use the elements. So they literally have a beat for earth, a beat for water, a beat for fire, and a beat for air. And they combine it that way. And they tell stories with that. And they are elaborate polyrhythms. Look him up sometime on YouTube. I'm sure there are still videos of him out there.
What was the name?
Hamza al-Din.
There we go.
That's it.
So Hamsa.
Or ZA, depending on where you are.
Yeah. And then Al, and then Din, Dean. Hamza al-Din.
Yeah, it comes up as it comes up with the Z when I put it into a search.
Yeah.
Okay. Good to know for those who want to check him out. Okay.
So Here's the question. Now that we've talked about this, what is your art and what do you speak to? If you're a Sufi, one of the things that you speak to is the opening of the heart. Why do you open the heart? Snap quiz. Why do you open the heart if you're a Sufi? Or anybody?
To perceive?
Oh, more than that. You open the heart so that you can develop conscience. No heart, no conscience. Without conscience, people will do anything. With conscience, they connect with the other as a subjectivity, and they do not want to harm that subjectivity. That alone can change the world. And here's the difference between us and them, the evil them that's out there. They want people to not have conscience. If you listen to El Chito Baboso, what does he say? He says, hate the other guy. The other guy is not human. They're terrible. They're evil. They do all of these terrible things to you. They want to come to your house and eat your pets.
They're losers.
Yeah, they're criminals. And some of them are nice people.
And he just lies endlessly.
Yeah, because he realizes the truth doesn't matter. Only the story matters. And if you tell the story loud enough and fast enough, you win. And Andra mentions to develop our essence. And yes, absolutely so. You can't develop your essence without conscience.
Mhm. RM mentions transformation. That's part of it. Of
Yep.
course. To come in union with all. We are at just, think about the fact that we're already in union with all. It's just a matter of
Remembering.
remembering.
Where have we heard that word before? So, again, it goes back to what is your truth? And how do you express it?
It's going to be different for each of us.
Yeah, it's not a rhetorical question, though. You can feel free to tell us so that we can cheer you on. And remember, he who controls the stories controls what people think.
Carl, yes.
All right, I'll say my art is kinetic sculpture. The medium is energy, and the reason is to promote consciousness and well-being.
I love it.
My hat's off to you. I want to see some.
I was just going to say, pics,
Yeah.
videos. It's kinetic, so I guess videos.
Video would be better.
It's not kinetic in the sense that most people think of it with little pinwheels and moving parts. It's actual energy moving through manipulating chi,
Ooh, okay. Yes.
feng shui, and transforming spaces into being a resonator.
Awesome. Excellent.
Yeah, this is something I would love to experience.
Thank you, Carl. Ian.
Yeah, it's very difficult for me to figure out how any of this might work for me, because these days in particular, I've not been being very creative. Um, but I've been wondering, in some sense, one of the things I try to do is to curate things. I go and discover I work through a lot of things on the internet and YouTube in particular, but I try to post only the best things I find, and to share them with some thoughtful comments. And I think that's the best I can think of for what my truth might be these days.
Well, if you can arrange an experience for somebody through that, why not? Seriously, why not?
Yeah, I think that's what I've been trying to do for quite a while now. I, and very occasionally somebody responds to it positively.
Kind of makes me think of collage art too, as a metaphor.
Yeah.
Mm-mm-mm. So we actually have RM shared some thoughts earlier that are relevant to this question. She said, yes, perhaps sketching more, writing poetry again after having done so as a child. And yes, she adds, my recent Enneagram work, first part before the point of no return, is worldly, seen, zahir, humanly, earthly, and after the point of no return, it's heavenly, unseen, batin. So that's like outer and then inner, or what is revealed and not yet revealed. Yep. So while you all are thinking about ways that you guys might be able to open yourselves up to art in this particular way, I want to reflect on M's question. M said, Mevlana Rumi starts the Masnavi with the word listen and says, listen to the nay, what it is saying. So the story needs listeners. So we need to listen before we can create stories worth listening to. She's asking this as a question.
Yes.
Do we need to listen before we can create stories worth listening to?
You've been listening your whole life.
Mm.
It also sounds very much like exactly what Adrian was saying
Yeah, it
about
does.
listening in music.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think of what our teacher said about getting out of our own way so that we can bear witness. And in reflecting on what we bear witness to, you never know what's going to come out. Osama.
Yeah, to M's point on listening, I think we can also form a practice around listening as well, where it can get refined through time, kind of like what Adrian's also talking about. Um, there, which is interesting because in the beginning it can be a little bit uncomfortable, to be in so much silence. And that silence at some point becomes almost like a pregnant silence. There's so much potentiality in it. It's so rich. Um, that sometimes, I mean, we've all probably experienced either ourselves or around some people who are not comfortable with that silence for a long period of time. But with enough practice and with that silent, with that listening, in that silence is refined, there's a capacity to hear beyond the surface level of sound. And there's a rhythm. There's an actual rhythm and melodies that are happening at some transcendent level that with a group of people and sometimes even by oneself, but hopefully within a group of people, someone can grab that thread of that rhythm or that melody or that sound or and sometimes it's poetry, whatever it is, there's something that's like, whoop, here it is. And then everybody's kind of following along with that uh, what that silence is trying to express. And that silence is, in a way, presence is just, it's there. It's constantly there. It's always there. Um, so yeah, that silence, we're always doing it and it can be refined. It can, there's a moment where it can really be refined and we can listen um, beyond the super beyond the zahir, beyond the seen, and it kind of like whoop, it goes in that unseen, and it just yeah, it's an ocean, that silence.
Feel like
Absolutely.
if Alka were here, she'd be like, wah, wah. So I'm saying it
Wow.
for her.
Well, indeed. I was watching the ocean this morning, and the waves are where all the noise is. So you just listen to the waves, and that's where you know that that's the ocean. But when you kind of look over the waves into the depth of the ocean, the far beyond, there's a stillness there. And that stillness and the waves combined, the Zahir and the Batin, is what makes life. So life is continuing, Ya Hayy Ya Qayyum. And it's that listening, that particular kind of listening that allows then the storytelling, because everything's telling a story. The Ney had a story. Rumi invited us to listen because the Ney had a story of yearning, right? And the Ney is made out of the, what's that?
Read.
Yeah, river cane.
Exactly. So everything is actually a story and a storyteller. But to be the storyteller of your truth, hopefully for us, is to bring awareness, to spark awareness, to initiate awareness, to create awareness. We need to be in that kind of listening in order for then the listener as Sami to talk through us. And through whatever our art is, we've been trained all our lives to where we are now, to whatever we're doing as a vocation. And that vocation then becomes our instrument to tell our story. And you've brought it forward to us very, very beautifully and created an awareness for us now to be able to have a new sight on our own being in this world, wherever we are. Yeah, to catch that music and hopefully to express our music in our unique way and stimulate the awareness as counterpart to all the lies that are out there to keep us asleep. Thank you, both of you. Thank you, all of you. Thank you.
That gets us, but before we get into the last thing I want to say, Kevin said something.
Yeah, we have a bunch of stuff I'd
Actually,
love
Khalil
to
said this, and we need
add to
to
the
address it.
conversation. So
Yeah, so go back to Kevin.
Kevin says it's poetry for me.
Oh, higher up.
Mostly higher up? Where? What did I
Oh,
miss?
no, right where you are.
Okay. Um, See, I see the self-criticism here. I'm going to speak to that in a moment, but Kevin saying the art for him is poetry. Mostly bad poetry, but poetry nonetheless. I only tend to pop out a few a year, but it tends to say anything I had to express much closer to my truth, the heart, than anything else. So here's the thing. Bad poetry according to whom? And first of all, is it coming from the heart? Is it coming from that place of truth? And that is the critical thing. This is not about having an audience. This is not about producing a consumable. This is about allowing this music, as Osama was just talking about, to flow through us and to be curious about what emerges and allowing it to be what it is. And of course, at the same time, we can hone our craft. We can strive to get curious about how we might do things differently, how we might enhance our level of sophistication and our understanding. All of those things can be true at the very same time. And Kevin continues, Osama, there's a communication technology that sounds like what you're describing called circling. Another offshoot is authentic relating. A few of my friends facilitate these groups. Khalil says, I've been to several circling slash dialogos weekend workshops with Guy Sengstock and John. I'm sorry, my contacts are terrible. John Vervaeke. Is that close? If you want to correct me on the pronunciation, great. A powerful and moving method indeed. Kevin says, yes, I circled with Guy as well. I also love John's work on the meaning crisis. Oh, I'm familiar with that too.
Just consider here for a second what just happened. Kevin told us a story. And that story pointed at a place where people could go to learn something. It's just that easy sometimes. Just that easy. Oh, let me tell you a story about this workshop that I attended doing this thing called circling. Wow, it was fine. And people go, bitchin', man, I'd like to do that.
Bitchin'. Yes.
Every now and again, at least once a decade, I like to use that term.
I love it. I love it every time he says it. Cracks me up. Um, yeah, so I mean, Khalil and Kevin are in conversation now because of a story that has brought them together.
Yes. So this doesn't have to be, I mean, you don't have to write the Masnavi. If you can, do it. But consider,
Yes.
Rumi lived in Konya, which is in Anatolia, right? But he wrote in Farsi. He wrote in Persian because that was the snooty language of the time. It's like if you were an Englishman in the 14th century and you were a noble, you had to speak French. And his poetry was wonderful. It's beautiful. It is exquisite. But consider for a moment Yunus Emre. Yunus wrote in Turkish. He wrote in the language of the people, and his poetry is simple, but it is no less beautiful. You can approach this from wherever it needs to be approached. And when I say Yunus, I mean Yunus Emre, the great Turkish poet. But in this circle, if I say Yunus, everybody knows who I mean.
Our homie Eunice.
Yes.
I'm also showing my age now. All right. Um, yes, Khalil, gnarly. Yeah, and Kevin says, it's tongue-in-cheek bad poetry. And that's a perfectly valid means of self-expression too. There's play in this.
Yeah.
I always love to remind us that play is an intrinsic part of this as well.
Yeah. I make bad poetry up for Noor daily.
we make stupid songs together.
Yes.
And I
And
say stupid with non-judgmental tongue in
oh,
cheek.
they are purposefully stupid.
Yeah,
They
exactly.
are meant to be dumb as shit.
Okay,
But
so
we have fun.
and we enjoy them. Um, Sometimes they stick because they're so hilarious. But anyways, Andra says, I'm gonna get to
Yeah.
Ram's question after. Andra says, I was thinking that even though art is probably the most effective way people can use their voice in creating a business, and even though art is probably the most effective way, people can use their voice in creating a business and serving humanity in a way, in a way, or writing about their life journey and what they've learned and what dragons they had to fight, not necessarily in art form.
Actually, I would say that um, the auditory arts are more potent than the visual many times. And starting a business, that's a story. Every business has its story. Every business has its mythology. And all you have to do is look at their purpose statement or various things like that to begin to see what it is. And then you watch the people who run the business and you see what it really is.
Kevin, do you have a thought you'd like to share related?
Well, just real quick, I was thinking about how this discussion sparked an insight into something somebody had said once about how our favorite childhood story or stories end up becoming the patterns that we end up living our lives by. And I've reflected on that for a long time because it's turned out to be very true to
Yeah.
a spooky degree. Um, so I guess I'm just actively curious if if that's been other people's experiences, but
Yeah.
it's really interesting.
It was certainly
It's a very
mine.
compelling idea.
I mean,
Mm.
my childhood stories were, I mean, there's a bunch of them, but the ones that people would know, El Zorro, the fox. When I was a kid and Disney's Guy Williams came on in glorious black and white, I would be sitting in front of it and watching it. And he was like, to me, the perfect hero, doing what was right, caring about people, fighting the evil of men who would um, do anything for money and power, and who were oppressors. It was a great story, and it affects me to this day.
I'm gonna have the theme song stuck in my head now.
Yeah.
That's a great one. Yeah, for me, don't laugh, but one of mine was Sailor Moon, so that has stayed with me to some extent. And I found ways to be inspired through critiquing it as well. So that's another part of this.
Funnily
Um,
enough, I actually saw some episodes of Sailor Moon recently.
did you?
Yeah, I, Adult Swim was
Oh, yes.
showing some historical episodes, sort of in the 4 to 6 slot on Fridays,
Hmm.
and they had Sailor Moon and Naruto, which is one of my favorite
Oh, wow.
things I've seen. I saw all of the episodes of Naruto, some of them multiple times. And I rewatched the original as opposed to Naruto Shippuden, which is the sequel.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
Sailor Moon was interesting, although I had to give it up after a while because I always have too many things I want to watch and I start running out of space on the DVR.
Got it. Yeah. Yup. So Sailor Moon was mine. And Khalil says one of his was Around the World in 80 Days. That's classy. Kevin, as an aside, says the Zora theme song is bitchin'.
Damn right it is.
It is pretty.
Even Boss.
I made him not skip it because I wanted to hear it every episode that we watched. We did like a marathon a couple of years ago. And I was like,
Yeah,
you can't skip it.
when the Disney Channel put up all the Zorro episode.
Disney Plus, yeah. It was
Yeah.
worth it. It was
It
worth
was worth
watching.
every minute.
So RM asks, I have a question. All my sketches were done without my efforts. Is there a word for it?
Yeah, it's called Stream of Consciousness.
Yeah. And that's artistry.
Yeah.
Don't overthink it. Let it happen. That's part of what we mean by getting out of our own way. Let it be fun. Let it be as easy as it can be. You don't have to be a tortured artist.
No, no tortured artists. No, no, no.
No, we want happy artists.
Yes, Kevin says Sailor Moon is loosely based on it's a Japanese folktale about Princess Kaguya, a Taoist tale about an immortal princess that lives on the moon and comes to Earth to forget her immortality. Yeah, I don't know if it's Japanese specifically. Taoist is a good way to put it.
Well, the Japanese and the Chinese trade off their stuff pretty
Yeah.
regularly. So, in wrapping this up, we aren't going to tell you how to do this. We have given you tools by which you can figure out the how yourself. That's the last 6 years of talks. The trick is work on yourself, find the stories that you need to tell, find the medium that you want to tell it in, and do it and put it in the world. And make it as powerful as you can or as quiet as you want it to be. I mean, you could be a rock star. You could sing incredible protest songs. You could be Joan Baez, except that she's already Joan Baez, so you can't be her. But you could just write a short story and get it published somewhere or publish it yourself. The wonderful thing now, as much of a sewer that the internet can be, it's also a powerful mode of communication that can slip underneath the controlling, grasping claws of the empowered class. So put up stuff on the internet.
Without getting slave driven by the algorithms.
Yeah. Now, if you go for the clicks, you'll never be able to tell the truth.
Mm-hmm. Yep. But yes, instead of trying to be anybody else, as Kevin says, you could be you. And that might be hard sometimes. But it's
And,
also easier than trying to be anybody else.
Yeah.
and try to do it in community.
Yes. That's the best part. So that's what I got to say about this topic. It's a fun topic, something to think about.
And well done, everyone.
Yeah.
Any last thoughts before we wrap up?
I have one last thought, actually, like a question.
Yeah.
What about when you've got too much ambition to tell your story? You want to write that book, you want to do that thing that's going to change the world, and the ambition becomes what we call hirs, like too much, and blocks you because the sincerity is gone, the creative force isn't moving for you but against you, because there's just too much ambition in wanting to do the good thing. What to say about that?
I would say you started too big. If you were going to exercise your muscles and you wanted to get strong, you don't start with a 500-pound barbell. You start with a 5-pound barbell. So if you want to write the great story, the great novel, learn to write a great short story and write it on a different subject, one that you have no ego about. Short stories are one of the best ways to perfect your writing craft. And I have this is not my words. This is the words of a friend of mine who is a published author of 30 books at least, maybe more, who teaches writing, teaches creative writing, and knows about this. And he says, you want to perfect your craft? Learn to write a good short story. So start small.
Yeah.
Set the giant thing aside until your craft is perfected enough to do it. Because what that usually is you know that you want to write the story, but you don't know how to write it. You don't know how to structure a story. Everybody has good ideas, but the skills of writing in particular are very well laid out to be a successful writer. Does that make sense? Does that answer your question?
Yes, partially. Sometimes you've got the skills, you've got the idea, but you don't have the energy and the like the flow, the boost to get you into it, the procrastination kind of thing that holds you back.
And then, if that's the case, you have the skills of a writer, you have all of that, but you don't have the energy, go back to your practices. What in your nafs is in your way? Clean that up. Polish the heart. Do the thing. And there's a whole library of techniques to do that. Free for the using. You just go through, learn it, do it.
Yeah, but I guess therefore, again, it comes back to listening to the story we have about what we're doing or not doing in our head.
Yeah. Yeah.
Clearing them out.
Because actually, that was the initial thought that I had was, well, it sounds like, I mean, I know this for myself, right? In situations like that, I'm actually distracted from the thing that I'm trying to do. And so the struggle then is to start cutting down on the ways that maybe I have too much going on. Maybe I'm being pulled in too many different directions, and I'm frustrated by this sense of wanting to do this particular thing. But I'm either overwhelmed with too many other things going on so that I'm not focused, or it's like staring up at this giant rock wall to climb, and I don't even know how I'm going to get up there. So one thing I've been thinking about recently, it doesn't have to be writing, but in this case, since we're talking about that, I don't sit myself down and think, okay, I have to write an essay right now. I think I'm going to write for 10 minutes. I don't even know what I'm going to write about before I sit there, but that's how I start because I need to get the juices flowing, so to speak. I need to think about how good it feels to write, as opposed to, oh my God, I know I should be doing this thing. Why am I not doing it? And if it needs to be 5 minutes, if it needs to be less time than 10 minutes, or if pages, I know some people there's this book called The Artist's Way. And one way she encourages people to stay motivated is to develop a discipline of doing morning pages, which means every morning you write I don't know, let's say 3 pages. I forget how much it is. And that feels a little tedious to me, like page numbers, but writing for 10 minutes, I can do that. Time flies. And by the time I'm done, oh shit, like 45 minutes have gone by. And I wasn't even overthinking it. And it could be a bullet list. It could be more like a diary entry. It could be something intellectual that I'm chewing on, and I just want to clarify my ideas about it. I don't care what it is. I just have to do the practice. So I think there are other ways to do that with sketching and with singing. I do that with singing as well, actually. Once I'm warmed up, I don't care what it is, but I'm going to sing something to myself and I'm not going to overthink it. I'm just going to feel it. I want to feel how it feels good to do that.
Yeah, that sounds good. Thank you.
Yeah.
If I can jump in real quick here. I know
Sure.
Go for it.
Yeah, and there is for me there was a point in time where the attachment to the art itself is let loose, cutting that cord of the attachment to the art, um, whether it's written or sound or music, and it doesn't have to be complete. There was a point where there was a fear of, which is there's a scarcity mindset, right? Like I have this idea and it's the only idea, but the ocean of creativity is vast and it's there, it's available. Um, so like creating, it's kind of like creating and throwing in the ocean. Create and and the more we create, the more ideas come. It's it's not a finite um it's not a finite thing. There's an abundance of it. So the ambition sometimes for me, that ambition of like, ooh, this is great, this is gonna be the best, this is like the most, the biggest thing. And it's like, okay, let me check myself real quick. What is that? And sometimes it is fear. Sometimes it's fear of that. Ooh, if I let this out, I don't know if I'm gonna have another one. So let me hold on this as much as possible. Let me keep editing. Let me keep working on it. Let me keep, uh, you know, put adding stuff and whatever. And it's like, it gets to a point where it's no longer now. It becomes something of the past. And then it loses its thing. So creating and just keep creating more and more. Yeah.
I would just add, simple is good. Simple is beautiful. Major chords are beautiful. Two notes are beautiful. They don't have to be a groove that's just groovy. There's nothing more beautiful than that, you know? So simple is simple.
Yeah, yeah. Awesome. That's all wonderful. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
All right.
Yeah.
So go forth, create, change the world.
Yep, yep. Hmm.
May the force be with us.
Yep.
The story.
I love that. Yes. Yeah. Andra says, clear and set your intentions. And like Osama said, let the divine do through you, which is, letting the force be with us. Exactly right. Yeah.
That's right. The
Well
evil
done.
powers have guns and frothing at the mouth minions. We have the force. We have Jedi mind tricks.
Yep.
And temporary autonomous zones. One of the Back when I was a kid, one of the great things that we did was called guerrilla theater. That's guerrilla theater, for those of you who are thinking of a guy in a big hairy suit. Not that. And this is putting on a play on the street and involving everybody around you, whether they're a member of the cast or not, in the play, and getting them to create. Because sometimes there's no script.
Yeah.
So here we have with guerrilla enlightenment.
Inshallah. God willing.
All right, I'm going to switch us over to
mode.
Brady Bunch mode. And here we are. A fun crowd.
Yes, I had fun. Thank you,
Yeah.
everybody.
We've heard
Well
from
done.
everybody, I think. Yeah.
Just about. Yeah.
All right. So, bye, folks.
Thanks for hanging out with us, and
We'll see you
take care
next
of
week.
yourselves. Be safe. We'll see you next week. Bye.